As I told you before, I think the core of this topic that is very important and it's very sensitive for authors. The core is not the identity. The core is the clear relationships, and the core is the clear rules for both parties. That means that the author knows what's the process they are ongoing. The author must understand which are the rules in the journal, which are the characteristic, the aim of the goals of the journal. This is very important for the author. Peer reviewers need to follow transparent and clear rules to offer objective and professional feedback about the quality and the characteristic of the text. I think we need to work in a journal and as a peer review in putting in clear these rules. What we judge, which are the points that are important for us as a peer reviewer, which are the points that the journal is focused to accept or reject a paper. This is the important thing. Identity is a fantasy, it's a secondary point, and we need to work based on clear rules and protocols to create a reliable relationships between author and peer reviewers.
Excellent question. Actually, on one hand, revealing one's identity could potentially foster collegiality, encourage constructive critics, and or perhaps lead to collaborations, etc. On the other hand, without raising awareness, keeping identities anonymous fosters the freedom to provide honest criticism, permits objective reviewers, and protects reviewers. Negative reviewers are likely to lead to such outcome. Conflicts of interest can be an issue when a reviewer's identity is revealed.
Yes, sure. I remember once, a couple of years ago, that I was in a scientific meeting. It was one afternoon at a cocktail, and one researcher approached me and told me that I had reviewed his paper, and that he was very happy with the review because it helped him have a better paper, and we keep on talking about science and so on. That so I think it does good reviews. I mean, they may be reviews. There may be negative or positive, but I mean, when you do a review and you try to help authors, the authors recognize that, and I think that it is a great opportunity, to become close colleagues and to work together and so on. And so I think that is one of the advantages of revealing a peer reviewer's identity. And I think that another advantage is that a peer review becomes an acknowledged activity, because now there are so many papers, perhaps in the history there was a small community of peer reviewers. Now most scientists will at some point of their career peer review a couple of papers at least. So I think it adds accountability to the system, to the work of the peer reviewers. And obviously, the other benefit relates to the accuracy of the scientific findings themselves. We peer reviewers help building.
Yes, I think there are definitely benefits to this more transparent peer review that we've been discussing. And as you mentioned, one of the main benefits is really this stronger, these greater opportunities for collegiality and collaboration. Because as a reviewer, or even as an author receiving the reviewer's comments, you have the potential to learn about a scholar and their work whom you didn't know before. And once you know about that scholar, you could propose collaborations, you could talk to them, you could mention their name to other scholars who might have similar interests, and you could even engage in more tangible collaborations. For instance, starting a research project where you're both investigators in a project, or co-hosting a conference. Other advantages are more research-oriented, that you know now about this other work, this other approach. You can cite it, use it in your own work, mention it again to other scholars so that there's greater circulation of knowledge. And finally, a more specific type of benefit would be simply in terms of the author receiving the comments from the reviewer. That, as I've mentioned before, if the author knows where the reviewer is coming from, then you can either give more credence to the comments. If it's someone who you know has a lot of experience in your field, for instance, you might give those comments more weight. Or you can, if the author has or reviewer has a specific methodology, the reviewer could consider how that methodology works in this one particular instance, and the author could consider whether the reviewer's methodology that's coming through is applicable to some degree to their work. And I think a final benefit, which is less academically focused, is just simply that if the author and the reviewer know who each other are, the author can thank the reviewer, and the reviewer can see how useful their comments were. So it's a little bit more the collegiality and just creating a warmer feeling within the academic discipline as a whole.
Despite the disadvantages, of course, there are benefits apart from what you've mentioned in the question. I think first, it builds confidence. It can build confidence and encourage reviewers, especially if you review a paper and it is a good paper and it gets published. So if it gets published and your name is mentioned, it is a good thing. It can be motivating. Another thing on the side of the author is that it can help them to see that their work is actually good, encourage them to publish more because they get into contact with people who they admire, scholars that they admire, or reviewers who've done some good work for them or given them comments that have been helpful. And secondly, I think it can build trust that a scholar's work is in good hands, that the person who's reviewing has the necessary skill or experience. And depending on the author's view, this is now a downside in my thinking. It can influence how they receive the feedback. So for instance, if they know the reviewer and maybe they don't have, good experience, good past experience with the reviewer, it can actually influence how they consider this. And it can also be a good thing if they really wanted to work with them or have them review their work. So those are the things that come to my mind when I think about the goodness of revealing identity.
Completely. As I said, in my opinion, this would open avenues to collaboration or at least discussion with peers. So as per my first reviewing, I could have this team had published to publish a very good paper. But what I also realized was that this was their first one on this specific topic, which had been my project during my whole PhD, but also the first postdoc. Thus, I had the possibility to look for years in the best ways possible to perform these experiments. But as an early career researcher, what was the weight of my knowledge against the group leader of the team, a recognized professor? So if I had been able to let them know who I was and what I had been working for in the last 4 or 5 years, my comments would have certainly raised their interest, and I could have helped them setting up their experiment properly and publishing then a better paper.
It could, and it may not. However, revealing reviewers' identity, as I just mentioned now, may foster future collaboration. When authors get the reviewers' report, and get to know the name, or when it is published, they get to know the name of those that reviewed their manuscripts, it can foster collaboration. That is one. Two, in cases where the authors see the reviewer as someone superior to them in that field of research, especially from the criticism from the work. Like the reviewer really criticized the work to add value to it. Authors will always appreciate that. So it can, as I said, collaboration, and it can give a room for mentorship or learning relationship. Like authors can now decide to be learning or submit himself or herself to be mentored by such reviewer, especially, as I said, when that reviewer happens to be a much more expert in the field.